Man of Mastery episode 58, the Unbreakable 48. All right, look, I started this podcast and the website and the extensions of that are out there right now through social media and the things that I've hinted at that are coming here in the near future but not yet unveiled. I started all these things because a lot of us, so many of us, reach a level of success. And I'll do success with air quotes, but we reach that success at a cost, at a cost of falling out of alignment with other areas of our life that are important. So sometimes that looks like our health, right? We become very successful maybe as a family, as a parent. Maybe it's financially in a career, but then we've let our health go, our fitness. Or maybe we've spent so much time in the working world, career and financial, that relationships have fallen out of alignment, friendships, family, things like that. Maybe another way of saying it is some of us just plain gotten soft or need a challenge, a kickstart, a group of people or a spark or an idea or some kind of energy that's going to provide that. So that's what we're about here. And in fact, if you're a guy who needs something along those lines, looking for an epic peer group, challenges, experiences, there's also a private Facebook group for Man of Mastery that you can reach out and apply to and find. But today's episode is also aimed at those things. I mentioned that we're going for a while to a 2-week rotation as some of these other strategic opportunities develop to spend time on those things. But I want to do an audio-only solocast today to recap and share a little bit more about the experience we had with last week's guest. So if you heard Simple is Unbreakable, episode 57 with Thom Shea, you probably heard me talk about the Unbreakable 48 experience that I did with my family and Tom's team. So that's what today's episode is about. We're going to take the Unbreakable 48. I want to share more about the format so you understand really what that is, what we did. I'll share some of the experiences and insight that I went through and that I can share a bit of from my family and some others that I heard from. And then something like that always takes, at least for me, a little bit of time to really unpack, to digest, to sink in. So I'm going to share a little bit of the debrief or how that left me afterwards in reflection. So Thom Shea, and again, if you have read either of his books, the newest one, 3 Simple Things, or his first one, Unbreakable, it's all about simple things done over and over again as ways to forge new habits, positive new habits. And the Unbreakable 48 is a great combination. It's got a lot of the principles from the Unbreakable group, and it's organized around some of the pillars that Tom has in the 3 Simple Things book. So here's how the event sets up. This is a right now it's conducted as a virtual event. I imagine this is normally or in the future will be an in-person event. It's, as the name implies, 48 hours long. So you've got a 48-hour event that's made up of 4-hour tranches or evolutions. So there are 12 4-hour evolutions. Within each 4-hour evolution, a few different things happen. There's a brief session, briefing the hour of work, effectively. There's about a 15-minute briefing via Zoom call for this virtual event. Then there is an hour of work to put in. And then there's about a 15-minute debrief, unpacking that hour of work, sharing and things like that. And then some other things in the physical realm I'll talk about in just a second. And then you've got a little bit of time to fuel, hydrate, rest for the next evolution, for the next cycle. So if this sounds familiar, some of you guys may have heard about this through David Goggins has something very similar. I think it calls it 4x4x48. So it's 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. Same idea. And I think even that one, Goggins prescribes, if you don't make it to the 4 miles, move for an hour, or substitute something other than running. But I believe that's a sort of a just free challenge. It's not necessarily guided with a brief and a debrief and a leadership team, or even the interaction of an organized peer group necessarily. It's also free. But the one thing I would say is, from my understanding of David Goggins, that's going to be a go hard type of thing, right? It's physical and it's mental toughness, and it probably stops there, other than the work and insight you may do on your own. Thom Shea is more of the holistic, well-rounded. So let's talk about this. So we get started, right? And I pulled my family into this, my wife and my son, and they just sort of said like, oh yeah, we're in. They had no idea what it was. So we jump on, we get our first brief. This event kicks off at 8:00 p.m. Friday Eastern time on the East Coast there in Carolina, where Thom Shea and team are. For me, West Coast, this is 5 p.m. on a Friday. And we brief. And Tom instructs us, all right, you got an hour of movement to go do. I want you to go walk for an hour. And you could kind of see some people looking at the screen and they're going, okay, yeah. He's saying walk, but I'm going to do this. And so one of my teammates asked the right question, right? Tom, do you literally mean walk? Or what do you mean? He goes, yeah, literally walk. Wait a minute. What if I want to run? Can I run or no, walk? Well, yeah, okay. How about if I walk with a weighted ruck on, weighted pack? No, just walk. And Tom's, again, it goes back to simple things. So what Tom really wanted to emphasize was a process of not taking yourself out of the process of the fight of the event too early, positioning yourself to succeed rather than positioning to fail. So I think we can apply that in a lot of ways, in a lot of places in life. So he explained also that this first evolution, the 5 p.m. for me, and the first 3 evolutions are organized around the physical. So let's go walk and just observe. How are you feeling? What's going on with your walk? What are you seeing around you? Things like that. Very somatic based. And this was, I didn't have a whole lot of expectations. I just signed up and decided to do this thing, but I had some exposure to the Goggins thing. So I also thought it would be go big, go hard. And instead, this was a lot more of a go slow to go fast, or maybe more specific to the way Tom would say things is, and in fact, I think he even pulled out the saying that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. Something along those lines. And as far as being together, so physically, locally, I had my family who was willing to do this with me and support me in it and support me by doing it. But then virtually, we had this team. We had Tom and the Unbreakable Leadership team around him, which was his crew, his wife, his kids. And then this virtual community of participants that was, two full Zoom screens full. So probably, 40 or 50 people. And it was pretty amazing. It's pretty clear that several people had been to Thom Shea events before and were returning. But most people, I think, didn't know each other. And it was pretty powerful to see people almost from the beginning just being willing to share and put themselves out there. So, all right, 5 p.m. off we go for a family walk for an hour and then come back and debrief. And then in addition to the debrief and people starting to share some insights or what occurred to them or what they observed during that first evolution, then the instructions for after the debrief were to hydrate. So at least a glass cup, 8 ounces, 16 ounces, whatever it was of water, of hydration, and stretch, 20 minutes of stretching. So there's in the physical, there's the mobility aspect of it. So stretch. And then, of course, as this thing goes on, you're going to have to start finding some intervals and some ways to fuel, to eat, to fuel, get calories, and to rest. Get some naps, get some rests in here. So that was the first one. And in the first one or two of these evolutions, I don't recall, as people started to share one gentleman and his share in particular that stuck with me. I mean, this guy was rock hard, solid looking, like he could have put us all on his back literally and carried us through the 48 hours. He shared that he's a public speaker and a minister, and I don't recall the gentleman's name, but he shared this story or this question he poses in a lot of forums, which is, who knows where the wealthiest place in the world is? And the answer is the graveyard. And his point was along the lines of, it's rich with unfulfilled ideas, goals, concepts, things that people didn't execute on. And I don't know if this is exactly how he meant it, but the way I took it, it was a great setup for the next 48 hours and a chance to think about some of these things, was about realizing our potentials and going after hard things, facing scary things, doing things that might seem daunting or even impossible, and then figuring out ways to do them. Moving for 48 hours or the number of miles we were going to put in, to think about that with 48 hours, 2 full days ahead of you, is pretty daunting. But the only way to do it is one step at a time, one hour at a time, one evolution at a time. So the physical became the basis for those first 3 evolutions. Like I said, 5 p.m. for me, and then 9 p.m., and then 1 o'clock in the morning. So I think between the 9 and 1, I snuck an hour and 20-minute nap in there. Now you got to wake back up, get moving. It's kind of chilly at night, brief, and then hit the road. And you got an hour to walk around. 9 to 10 o'clock, there's still, there's cars. I don't know what people think when you're walking around at 10 o'clock. Maybe they think you're walking home from a neighbor's house. But now you start thinking when you're walking around at 1 o'clock in the morning, a whole different look. The world looks different, literally. And then there's different animals out, different sounds. Coyotes in my area, different crickets, frogs, whatever they are, owls flying around. Very different than the daytime activity. And then some element of sort of self-awareness too is, gosh, I'm walking around a neighborhood. Am I popping up on somebody's Nest cam or security cam and they're wondering what the heck's going on? But at least it's not just a guy rolling around the neighborhood in a hoodie. It's a man, woman, and a child, so not too threatening. And in the end, nobody bothered us. Nobody cheered us on, but nobody bothered us. And you don't run into too many people at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. But beautiful moon, view of the lake, just a stillness that comes along with it. And then when we got to the second evolution, 5 a.m., so now Thom challenged us to switch it up, or not switch it up. Really, it's a matter of building and layering. So you're still sticking with the first evolution and that base layer of physical, the somatic basis. Now, the next 3 evolutions would be about the intellectual, about learning, about education. And so now the challenge was throw in a new or different, something different about your movement, or additional. So walk sideways, walk backwards, wear different shoes, take a different stride. Now you could start to run or do something different like that. So I went out for the first one in that evolution, 5 a.m. It was the first time I did anything solo. I did a run for that interval by myself. So 5 a.m. put me at sunup during my run. And a few things happened. So as far as observations, it's the first time I was doing an evolution without my team, without being with my team physically, even my local team, right? My family. And mentally, I just started thinking about the power of a team. And even when you can't be together, knowing that someone is supporting you virtually, my family back doing their thing, or my virtual team in the Unbreakable 48. I mean, you can extend that to start thinking about your family or friends or tribe or team, past and future. I mean, I sometimes kind of think about it from an ancestral perspective, tap into some sort of innate evolutionary power of ancestors sort of having my back. And then I literally got very timely and very much appreciated a couple messages, a couple texts from, I'll call them out, Brent Cassing and then Brian Dougherty of the Declan James Watch Company, who knew I was doing this thing and sent me some messages of encouragement, which were right on time and were awesome to receive, especially when I was doing an evolution on my own. 9 a.m. back to the walking and together as a family. So time to switch things up. I changed it out to a weighted weight vest. Actually, no, I did a second interval solo. I did a weight vest fast, probably a 4 mile an hour. I got 4 miles in. So I did a 4 mile an hour weight vest sort of walk myself. And at this point, it's firmly daylight and could kind of reflect on making it through that first night. Then 1 p.m., the third interval in the second evolution, is a family walk. So I changed from the weight vest to a heavier ruck. And in fact, we ended up doing almost 2 hours instead of 1 hour. We missed the debrief, but we got a lot of time to talk during that one. So we talked about things like what the perception was that was different between daytime and nighttime, and how that affected your mental state during something like this. So my son summed it up in terms of distractions. So during the day, there's so much movement, at least where we were, and probably anywhere, even in nature. But you've got things to observe. You got shadows. You've got birds moving around. You got maybe cars and people moving around. There's a lot of things that draw your attention and can distract your attention from doing something difficult. It's sort of the difference between running with headphones on and music and not. It can be a lot more difficult in a way without the music if you're not used to it, and it can be in a way a lot easier to get through when you are running or riding or rowing or something with music, because your brain is occupied with something. So the nighttime in reflection was sort of that equivalent of doing it without the music. Not any movement in terms of people, not as much movement in terms of nature or visually or things like that. So it becomes a different exercise, and it sort of foretold what would that second night look like in the 48. So a few things that came out during those evolutions, either as we talked or especially in debriefing with the team, I honestly thought I expected the team to dwindle. I expected people to maybe disappear, drop out, quit in that first night. Even though, Thom starts the whole thing off by, he talks about his view on why and makes it real simple. Why is because you said so, because you said you were going to do it. And as he talked about that with his Unbreakable Leadership team for us on these briefs and debriefs, nobody ever said that looking down or, looking within. They said it looking at the person sitting next to them or the people they were talking to on the screen. It was because I told you, I committed to you to do this, just like my family committed to me to help me through this, to support me in this, to do it with me. So I really didn't expect I expected attrition. And look, I'll be honest, I mentioned the guy who shared the wealthy graveyard story, pretty fit individual, but at the other end of the spectrum, there were definitely people on this challenge who I kind of looked at times and I worried for their health. I worried whether they were physically up to it, whether they were doing the work or going to be able to do the work. And people talked about, it was amazing how much they would just pretty quickly open up. And there was a lot of vulnerability and power in that. I mean, people who, to some degree, I'm sure struggled to get off the couch physically. And Thom even addressed some of that. And, people would say, look, I've fallen out of shape. I'm out of shape. And he goes, no, you're not. You're not out of shape. You're in exactly the shape that you've chosen to be in. You chose it and created it by your behaviors and things like that. And it wasn't critical. What was meant was, now you have a choice, and you can choose. You always have a choice, and you can choose differently. So one of the reasons he really wanted us to start simple, start slow, and to build was, he called this 48, the Unbreakable 48, a chance to reprogram, to recode ourselves, literally, in those 48 hours. So what else? Nobody dropped out. Nobody dropped out, at least up to this point, a day, almost a full day in, because now we're coming up on the third evolution, which started at 5 p.m. Saturday afternoon. So now we're 24 hours in, and the 5 p.m., 9 p.m., 1 a.m., the third tranche of 3 became the next layer. So it's still about physical and it's still about learning. Now it's also about relationships. It's relational. And this is, so the way that Thom's organized this, and referring back to his new book, 3 Simple Things, which I would strongly recommend, he talks about 5 domains, or 5 pyramids as he calls them. So they are physical and intellectual and relational, wealth-oriented, and then spiritual. And he even talks about, we talked about on the podcast, I think a little bit, maybe the 4-hour work week concept, but he's got the 6-hour day, and he literally prescribes a schedule or a way to fit all of those things with the right level of attention into 6 hours, in a 6-hour day, taking care of a well-rounded development, well-rounded behavior and life and time spent. So as we layered on the relational, and since I'd read the book, I related it back to that daily routine. It was really all about alignment, spending time in alignment with the people that are important to you, or that maybe even you need to refresh a relationship with or want to explore. So I think there was a design to this, for this component to be late at night or in the middle of the night. And he had even warned us in advance to let people know that we could be reaching out with a text or a phone call in the middle of the night during this Unbreakable 48. And really the question that he asked us to pose, and it's part of that daily routine in relationship and in communication with those people that are important to us, was really a question along the lines of, what's important to you? And what's important to you to accomplish today? What do you need to do? What do you plan to do? What's important for you to accomplish today? And how can I support you in that? And then flipping that around as well to share what you're up to and what's important to you and where you could use help, and ask for help. Sometimes asking for help is tough, but it's very, very powerful to turn around and be able to ask for help. So this is, again, we're into 24 hours plus at this point as we go through a 5 p.m., a 9 p.m., and a 1 a.m. For me, the fatigue starting to build up, probably more mentally at this point than physically. I'm pretty good at napping. I can lay down after one of these things, 5 minutes, I'm asleep. Waking back up for me is the tough part, to get out and do the next interval. And I could feel that fatigue mentally. And I really started to get a bad attitude that second night. I remember doing the 1 a.m., probably the 9 p.m. I think I was not in a great place mentally and emotionally on the walk that night with the family. And then 1 a.m. we all did movement around the house. So my son got on the bike. I got on the rowing machine. Did a 10K row for my movement, and I had got some music going during the run, and I think I had finally the row, and I think I had either turned the corner or finally had started to turn the corner about my attitude about that part of the process, or really maybe the entire process, as we moved from that second night into the third calendar day and the fourth of the three-legged, if that's the right word for it, set of intervals, evolutions. So this fourth set of 3 evolutions for us was 5 a.m., 9 a.m., and 1 p.m. And this is the fourth layer now, wealth, business, career, however you want to think about that. And I'm giving you a lot of previews of one of these events if you go to it, but also of the book. Again, 3 simple things. So you'll find a lot more about this, but the way Thom thinks about wealth is there are 3 things you should do every day, and 3 things that he asked us to do during these last 3 evolutions, which were around an existing client, a prospective client, and your business strategy. So every day and on these intervals or evolutions, he wanted us to reach out to somebody existing in our business relationship world. And I use the word, and I think they use the word relationship very much by design. In fact, there was a discussion about that, is what business happens without relationships. It's all relationship based. In fact, I think all of this stuff is relational. So that was 1, is reach out to an existing client. 2 was reach out to a prospect or something new in terms of line of business. Something, not only are you tending to existing business, but you're continuing to nurture a pipeline or future business or a future line of business. And then the 3rd part of that was strategy. Spend some time dreaming, thinking strategically, thinking big, thinking beyond current clients, current prospects. So, when you get down to 5 a.m. on Sunday, the end is sort of in sight, but it's still pretty far off, quite honestly. And this is a time when you really got to buckle down and stick to those micro goals. Going out for another walk or run or something at 5 a.m. when you're 36 plus hours into this thing, you can see a lot of progress behind you, but it's also a little easy to get overwhelmed by still having hours and hours to go, like 8 to 12 hours, right? So you got to chunk it down. You got to stick to the next evolution, the next hour, the next mile, whatever that might be. And you also have to continue to tend to the simple things. And that might be as simple as taking care of your feet on something this long. So having the right compression socks, taking care of hot spots, maybe doubling up on socks, dry socks, using like a Vaseline or other type of run goo product on your feet or other areas where you're getting chafing and hot spots. Like, you got to tend to all those things that seem simple and tiny, but if you're going to make it through or position yourself to make it through events like this, you got to take care of the simple things. So definitely got out of my funk in this last set of evolutions, and the sincerity and the simplicity of the process and appreciation really kind of came to bear at that point for me on the team, again, the process and the transformation. I don't know how much I transformed or would give myself credit for transforming, but certainly I could see it in my family. I could see it in people on the video call, the Unbreakable 48. I mean, by the end of this thing, maybe I didn't feel as much of a connection to the virtual members that I didn't know beforehand, but by the end, I definitely had a great level of respect for what people were doing. And some of the things that the family took out of it, or I saw in them as far as growth and transformation, was really just this leap of faith to do it. Hey, I'm doing this Unbreakable 48 thing this weekend. You guys want to do it with me? Sure. Didn't know what it was. Just, yeah, sure. We got you. We got your back. And just go do it. But it also, it's a great way to live and to understand that simple isn't easy. But that when you keep it simple, things become achievable. And you can do way more than you expected. Way more than maybe you would have thought you would choose to do or want to do or find possible to do. So I'd have to go back and look. We didn't do 48 miles. I know that. But I'm also not going to beat myself up about not doing 48 hours because we got so much more out of this thing than checking the box on a distance. I'm sure we did 30 plus, 25, 30 plus, in there. But the greater lessons are the things I'm talking about. And there's also, there are process sort of lessons learned in here too. Fueling and sleep, and how do you handle that on call it an interval event like this. So I've done, like a 12-hour daytime event before. I've done a 12-hour overnight event before. And in a way, those aren't 48 hours, but they're easier because you're just plowing ahead. You're not stopping to rest and then having to start again. In fact, that's one of the hardest things. Like you go out and do a 31-mile Ultra Spartan, it's 2 laps. So you have a transition area. You can stop. You stop for as long as you like. But the longer you stop, the harder it is to start again. And that was something that it's a little harder to figure out. It's a little more complicated about an event like this. How do you get rest? How do you eat and get calories? How do you hydrate? But you do it at the right times and the right quantities. Don't fall behind it, because then you've got a deficit you may not be able to make up. But how do you stay ahead of it too? And what's that look like? And then last, just unpacking back to how this has sunk in. One of the things I had talked to Thom about was compound interest. The way I think about his topics or his principles is it's like the power of exponential growth through compound interest. It's building those simple things upon each other, stacking like he did those 4 domains upon each other during the course of the evolutions in the 48 hours, the Unbreakable 48. And then you also take away memories, experiences. And really that's the rich stuff in life, right? It's not the material, it's the people and it's the experiences. That's the stuff that enriches you and that you're going to remember. Will my son forever remember 48 hours of craziness together? Probably, maybe not, but it's pretty memorable one, not one you do too often. And we did it as a family. And then ultimately, I think Tom's why of because you said so is his way of being very practical and very tactical. But I suspect, he's smarter than that, in that it's a little bit tongue in cheek, because there's always got to be something deeper there. And for me, the way it unfolded from an event like this is that the why, everybody's why, is ultimately relational. I don't think anybody has a true powerful why that's just focused on their own self, on their own advancement. That's not sustainable. Ultimately, it's about the person next to you, the person that's important to you, the relationship that's important to you. And maybe Tom's intro and I think he wrapped some of the 48 with this that really fits nicely in that is you have a choice. Just like the choice of what fitness level you're going to be at, you have a choice of whether you're going to honor your word or honor your excuses. Honor your word or honor your excuses. And going back to the relationships, you can honor your word or honor your excuses to yourself, but ultimately when you have the power of accountability to a team, to a group, to a family, to relationships, a tribe, whatever that looks like for you, that drives you, that's where honoring your word or honoring your excuses becomes super powerful. So awesome event. Highly encourage it. I don't know when they'll run another one, if it's going to be physical in person or if there'll be a chance for another virtual one during all this COVID craziness. Keep an eye out for it. Check out the book, 3 Simple Things, and highly recommend the next event. So you can go find links to both of those things, the Unbreakable Leadership Team and Tom's book, 3 Simple Things, which is out now. You can go find those either at the show notes for this episode, which will be at manofmastery.com/058, or go back and you can find the same links. And if you haven't, hit the episode and the interview with Thom that I aired last week in episode 57. So that'll be at manofmastery.com/057, and check out that conversation with Thom Shea of Unbreakable Leadership. All right, that's it for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed and found some value in that unpacking and that sharing. I thought it was really powerful for me and my family and insightful. And I for that reason, I hope that you find it that way too, and that it was useful to share with you and a good use of your time. That's it for this week. I'll be back on the normal cycle with next week's interview, which I think I'll air one on financial sovereignty. So talking about freedoms and degrees of freedom. Let's talk about it from a financial sovereignty perspective.